All right, so now we want to talk about balancing equations. So let's look at this. This is the combustion of methane. So here's methane, and if it's combusted, I add some oxygen, and I get CO2 and water. Okay, so this is just the basic layout. So let me look here. So I've got carbons, I've got hydrogens, and I've got oxygens. So if you notice, what elements I start with are the same elements I end with. So that's good. But let's see if I obey the law of conservation of mass. So mass says that matter cannot be created or destroyed. So let's kind of see how many I have. I have one carbon, I have 4 oxygens, and I have 4 hydrogens, and 2 oxygens. Over here I have 1 carbon, 2 oxygens, 2 hydrogens, and another oxygen. And if I want to add that up, 1 carbon, 2 oxygens from here, and 1 from here gives me 3, and then 2. Now, here's the problem. I had 1 carbon here, 1 carbon here. That's okay. I had 4 hydrogens here, but I only had 2 hydrogens here. And then I had 2 oxygens and 3. So what it's saying is that I just magically lost some hydrogens, just got rid of them. And it's also saying that I just magically made some oxygens. So what this means is that this can't be a correctly written equation, because for it to be correctly written, how much of each element I have on the left has to be the same amount of each element on the right. So what I need to do is I need to balance. So to be able to balance it, I can't just say, oh, well, let me just add one more O over on this side, okay? I can only adjust how many of each of these compounds I have. So what I would do is I would change the number I have of each one. We'll talk about how do I know that this is how I would do it when we talk about steps. So instead what I would do is I would say, okay, instead of just 1 O2, I'm going to have 2 O2s. Instead of just 1 water, I'm going to have 2 waters. So if you notice, I didn't change. It's still methane with oxygen going to CO2 and water. It's just the ratio of how many. It was a 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. Now it's a 1 to 2 to 1 to 2 ratio. So now if we look, I have 1 carbon, I have 4 hydrogens, 4 oxygens. I have over here 1 carbon, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 oxygens, and 1, 2, 3, 4 hydrogens. So now the same number of every element is on both sides. This is what we call balanced. So when we say we need a balanced chemical equation, what it means is the number of elements on the left in my reactants, and the number of the elements on my right, my products, has to be the same. Okay? This is the only way that I can have a balanced chemical equation. Otherwise, it's not going to be correct. Because remember, I have to obey, so this obeys the law of conservation of mass, because it is balanced. So then what does this look like? How do I represent this 1 to 2 to 1 to 2 ratio? So this is what it would look like if I were to actually write out my chemical equation for this guy. Okay? So I have my CH4, my O2, my CO2, and my water. And we said it's a 1 to 2, 1 to 2 ratio. Now, if it's a 1, we don't write it, because we know if I have the formula written, it's got to be at least one of them. So these numbers in front tell me what that ratio is. Those numbers are called coefficients. Okay? So it's going to tell me how many I have of each one, my ratio. All right, remember that the guys in the front, these are called reactants. Everybody to the left of the arrow, everybody to the right of the arrow are my products. That's what's being made. Reactants is what is used. Products is what is made. Okay? So if you notice, we've got reactants, products, I have my formula, and then I have my state. All of my compounds here are in a gaseous state. So this would be a correctly written chemical equation. It tells me all the information we said we would learn. We would learn the formulas, we would learn the states, we would learn if it's a reactant or a product, and that relationship of them to each other. those coefficients. Okay? So then your next question might be, well, how do I figure out that this was a 2 and that was a 2 versus a 3? Okay? So for us to balance equations, we actually have some steps that kind of help us to figure out which one should we change, how much should we change, to kind of figure out what these coefficients are. So on the next video, I'm going to talk to you and break down those steps for balancing equations.